A minute until game time here.
Okay, the live stream's up and running.
I'll be signed out.
Well, you can always get help. We've had a lot of good technical support today.
Yeah, but I break things. It just takes them longer to fix mine.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is 4:30. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the regular monthly meeting of the Judiciary and Law Committee, Standing Committee of the Dunn County Board of Supervisors. Meeting is called to order. The roll call should reflect that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 regular members of the committee are present, as well as Chairman Dave Bartlett and a number of staff.
You turn your volume down. Mute yourself.
Getting some interesting echoes. Yeah. How's that? More better?
All is good.
Okay, thank you. Approval of the minutes. There is a small correction to be made in your agenda. It says the approval of the minutes from the March 22nd meeting. That should be the April 20, what was it, Katie, 24th meeting. So with that correction, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the April meeting. Carl Vandermill moves and Mike Rogers seconds. Any other corrections, additions, complaints about the minutes? Seeing none. We've got the echoes almost under control. Whoa. We have a motion to approve the minutes. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, folks. There is no public comment today, so we'll get right to the staff reports, starting with the medical examiner. I see Marcy on the screen. Marcy, do you have anything to add to your written report?
I do not have anything to add to the written report, and it will be discussed a little bit later in this meeting.
We do have a request for some contingency funds that will be coming before us. Anybody have any questions of Marcy for the medical examiner's report? I'm trying to scroll through my agenda and everything else today. And I apologize, I would like to, without objection, change the agenda just a little bit so that we can get Josie LaLiberty in because she has another appointment later on this afternoon. If nobody has any objection, we'll take the report from child support next. Any objections? Don't see any, then we'll amend the agenda to do child support. Josie, do you have anything to add to your written report?
Just an update on our staffing. HR will be publishing vacancies that I have beginning this week. September 11th, I don't have my calendar, but whatever that Friday is. Doing the candidates June 21st.
Anybody have any questions for Josie?
Josie, when speaking, you need to speak into your mic. We can't hear you.
Me?
Josie.
Sorry, do you need me to repeat that?
Yes, I don't believe anybody, I don't think we could hear any of that. So if you could repeat it, that'd be great.
Sure. I was just going to say that HR will be posting my 2 vacant positions beginning this week, Thursday. It'll run for 2 weeks and we'll hope to be whittling down the candidates and doing interviews June 21st and 22nd.
Okay, everybody get that? Good. And again, I have to apologize. When I started with the staff reports, I was looking at the list from the minutes from the last meeting rather than the agenda for today. So now that the agenda is all screwed up, I think we'll just take potluck. What's going on? No, we'll go to the sheriff's office. Is Marshall here? There he is. Marshall, do you have anything to add to the report?
Just want to reiterate a couple of things. We are on our third straight recruitment for our correctional officers. We only had 2 applicants last time that we interviewed. One was unhireable based upon our past termination or leaving our past employment. Second one, we offered a shadow in the jail. We had high hopes for him. Spent a few hours in the jail and politely told us it wasn't what he expected it was, respected what we did, but no longer wanted to be considered. So we're recruiting again for another 2-week period. It's getting a little scary over there trying to think about filling positions, and we do have a couple more. We just had one person retire after 26 years last week, Deb Pavelski, and we're looking at a couple more. The sheriff wanted me to address the hiring process for deputy sheriff patrol. We did hire one, like on the agenda said, Samantha Kress. We have offered employment to a second person off the list. We've backgrounded a third. That background was not successful. At a supervisor's meeting today, we reviewed the rest of them were interviewed. At this point, it's entirely possible, very likely the next meeting we're going to ask to wash the list and start a new recruitment process because as I think both myself and the sheriff said in the past, just because we have 10 on the list doesn't mean that there's 10 hireable people. We're unwilling to take people of lesser quality just to hire somebody. I think we're better off spending the time and energy to get the best possible people to be hired. But he just wanted to give you a heads up that at this point, it doesn't appear that we're going to be making offers for full-time positions to anybody else on the list, but we'll make a request next month's meeting once we're fully on board with that to request a new eligibility list.
Anybody have any questions for the sheriff's office?
I got one. Don't mind, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Bauer.
Marshall, are you hiring new recruits right out of school or are you looking for experienced?
It doesn't matter to us. We'd appreciate experience, but we're actually taking applications of people who have not completed college yet, or I'm sorry, the tech college degree, or have achieved their certification yet, based on the fact that the eligibility list will be up to 2 years. So we'll take any person we consider qualified, trainable, and has the ability to become a good officer. Unfortunately, in today's environment, we're not getting a lot of qualified applicants. Even when you think you have a qualified applicant like we thought we had, sometimes you do background checks, some items come up that make them to be considered unhireable.
Marshall, you can correct me if I'm mistaken, but I think in the last round of interviews, I don't think there was anybody with law enforcement experience, was there?
Not that I would
I'm
say.
sorry, I shouldn't say that. There were some with some municipal experience. That's right.
Yeah, a few with some light municipal experience. One officer that we just provided a job opportunity to. He had worked for Sheboygan County Sheriff's Office for a year before moving back this way due to family requests. Other than that, little to no full-time law enforcement experience.
Thank you. Any other questions for the sheriff's office? I had some notes on my agenda reports earlier, but they didn't get saved somehow or other. So
if anybody knows anybody that's interested in the corrections field, please have them apply because we'd really like to interview a good crop of people and make a few hires.
Marshall, did I hear you correctly earlier saying that you might be opening the interview process or the application process up again?
We just did request a third posting of it. It was posted 2 days ago for 2 weeks for the correctional officer position.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else for the sheriff's office or the jail? I see the jail was passed their audit with flying colors, so congratulations on that. I don't see No, nobody from the jail here? Pass that along, Marshall. Thank you.
Brenda was going to attend, but obviously Brenda does a lot of hard work. Staff is very quiet. We never have any issues with the audit or the inspection by the state, which I think says a lot for their abilities and their effort at the jail.
And a nice new nurse's office.
Very nice.
Anything else? Sheriff's Department? If not, we'll move along, and I'm going to start following the order in the agenda here now, just to do something different. Courts, Katie, anything to add to your written report?
Yes, I'd like to add that we have our judges present with us tonight, and we have the two new elect judges. I don't know if they want to stand up or introduce themselves, but it's our first in-person meeting and they're here.
Greetings.
Judge Smelter, Judge Peterson, do you want to say anything about this?
Well, maybe they get introduce themselves. I think that-
This is the time normally when they do their skit, right?
Well, no, that's a few months yet.
Oh,
But I don't know if anyone at the meeting can hear us. Or is there somewhere we should go?
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Luke Wagner. I was recently elected for the Branch 3 position. So I'll be starting August 1. This is my first committee meeting to attend, so I'm here to sit back and learn some things.
I'm Chris Meyer. I was elected to Branch 2. I also start August 1st. And, you know, it's harder for me to be quiet, but I'm trying.
well, welcome to both of you. We're really pleased that we could meet you in person. This is quite a day for us. This is my first time seeing Josie in person. First time meeting Bob in person. He's been a supervisor for more than a year. And we've seen each other on TV a lot, but so we're really pleased that you're here and we're really pleased that you can be here in person, and we look forward to a long and successful working relationship.
Thank you.
I just have one more thing we'll talk about on the agenda, but nothing else.
Yep, go ahead. Oh, later?
Changes-
Yeah.
Yeah, later on. Yep.
Okie dokie. Any questions for Katie, Clerk Court's Office? Anything that anybody is? All right, then, moving right along. CJCC, I see Sarah's with us via the Zoom feature. Go ahead, Sarah.
Good evening. Yes, I'm pleased to report an update to my written report. We did receive the State Department of Justice Coronavirus Emergency Grant. We asked for about $150,000 to support a number of things, and we received just over $135,000. So basically everything that we asked for, they approved except for the security device. So really just pleased to kind of share the funding across the agencies. So the Sheriff's Department's going to get brand new laptops for their squads, 29 laptops. The DA's office is going to get a digital evidence system for storage and retrieval. And we're going to get some UV sanitation devices for the Judicial Center and for squad vehicles. So just really glad that we were able to get a good plan together and actually receive the funds. So, excuse me, I do have a budget request going through the admin committee so we can, for that budget adjustment, so we can accept those funds. But that's my update unless there's any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Sarah? Congratulations on the grant award. That was super. Does that include also funding for the DA's electronic data handling?
Yes, it does, for
Okay.
1 year of the service. Yeah.
Okay, good. And for those of you who missed it, the CJCC and Treatment Court had a nice little write-up in the county's magazine this month. And about 2 weeks ago, I think, a bipartisan legislative hearing on treatment courts featured one of the Dunn County graduates and mentioned to the executive committee that watching those folks tell their stories is, if you're not a fan of treatment courts, just because of the money they ultimately save us. Those reclaimed lives are, the stories of those people are just incredible. So kudos on both counts there. Anything else for CJCC? District Attorney, Andrea, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just briefly with respect to iCrime Fighter, we had a meeting with the police department and the sheriff's office, going through some struggles with trying to use that system. It's working well for body cameras and certain videos, but struggling with other files because we receive multiple files from different agencies. But cell phone downloads is a big one. Like Walmart surveillance video, Quick Trip surveillance video, the interview system from the jail aren't working as well as the body camera videos are. So it's taking the law enforcement agencies need to download it or upload it to the system. And we're not quite there yet on that working out the way we want it to. So still trying to work on making that feasible, but hopefully we'll be able to work out something. And then I did have a resignation in the victim witness assistance position. And so I'll be posting that. We get a lot of turnover in these positions. They're part-time and pretty low on the pay scale. So, but given Marcy's Law and the updated duties that my office has, it's really imperative that we fill that as soon as possible. So hopefully we'll find a new candidate. That's all I have.
Questions? Thank you, Andrea. Moving along, emergency management. Melissa? Melissa with us? Yep, there she is.
Yep. Really not much to add to my emergency management report. The 911 side of the house, I just wanted to add that we kind of partially opened up the EOC last week with Menominee PD having that missing juvenile that was actually from Saukville, Wisconsin. They issued an Amber Alert, but the DCI thought that the Dunn County Dispatch Center would be best to handle the incoming tips. So we kind of opened up the EOC and the FBI, DCI, Menominee PD, and emergency management and 911 were in the EOC, and we handled the process of that Amber Alert. And luckily she was found safe and very quickly, actually. So it was just kind of a partial open and went really fast, but it was a good test of, the phone bank that we have in there and some of the systems that we do use in that room. So that was, we were happy that she was found safe and quickly, and happy to say that I think that we passed the test. Everything in there worked as it should have. So that was the only addition I had.
Any questions for emergency management? I have one. I get those Amber Alerts on my phone, and I got this one when it occurred, but I also got it 3 or 4 times in the several days after that. Can you explain that?
Those alerts do not come from us. I believe it's all housed out of Dane County. Dane County handles all of the Amber Alerts for the state of Wisconsin. And they work closely with the DCI office. And I can check into that to see why that you would have received it more than once. I'm not really sure on that.
Well, it's not a huge deal. I just wondered if it was,
Yep.
I'm old and retired, so any kind of announcement that I get on my phone is kind of exciting. So
Right. Well, I'll check into it anyway. It's interesting. I know some people don't get them. That's the first time that I had gotten one, so I was actually happy that I did receive it. So,
anything else for emergency management? All right, thank you, Melissa.
Yep.
Then that brings us to. Don't have any items from the chair. We don't have, yes, we do. Consideration of actions to be taken. We have 2 contingency fund requests, both of which were mentioned. And the first is from the medical examiner. And in your packet was a explanation of what that's about. Marcy, did you want to elaborate on that request? Maybe we should have a motion to approve the request first, and then we can talk about it. Unless you'd like some explanation first before the motion. Not seeing much reaction one way or another.
We'll make a motion.
Supervisor Zans moves to forward the request. Supervisor Vandermillen seconds. All right, now we have a motion and a second to forward that request for contingency funds. Marcy, do you want to say anything about that?
Am I understanding correctly that the motion has been to, do you want me to answer questions about that? Do you want me to explain anything in more detail, or was it written clearly in the staff report?
I think it was pretty clear in the report. I'm just, if you had anything you wanted to elaborate. Did you have an opportunity to talk to the county manager and or the county financial officer regarding the request? And if so, what was their response?
Yeah, I had opportunity to meet with Paul and we talked at length, trying to come up with what the best solution for our present situation is for our department. And Paul and I together agreed that the most logical solution would be to put another full-time person on as described throughout the contingency fund request. I was very happy to have his support and Keith's support that was relayed through Paul and I's conversation as well.
Thank you. I see CFO Stry. Oh, Supervisor Rogers, question, comment?
So does this position then replace the one of the part-time positions or a couple of them?
No, it would not. We have a part-time position that's been open for well over a year. Due to COVID circumstances, it made it difficult at best to have time to train somebody and hire somebody and be able to follow CDC guidelines in training. We're a one-on-one training opportunity. We still need to fill that position in order to be able to cover 2 counties 24/7. Each county has one person, a minimum of one person staffed on at a time. So at present, we have 7 deputies and 2 full-time people. And the deputies are, as explained in the fund request, that they're limited at no greater than 1,559 hours per year, and their shifts are 12 or 24-hour shifts. And they use those up quickly, maximum 5 shifts a month, and they have full-time jobs, so they don't meet that maximum capacity very often. Most don't. So we really need the educated number of staff that we're asking for, and the ability for a full-time, another full-time deputy, just for succession reasons and opportunity for some of these younger deputy medical examiners to be able to be promoted in the future. Right now, one thing that I'll point out, I'm not shy about age, but the 2 full-time positions that are filled at this time, myself and Lynn Johnson, we're both nearing getting within 10 years, 5 and 10 years of retirement. And we really need to build this department so for succession. And that's as important to me at this time as also having any time off. This present system that we're working under does not allow for Lynn nor I, the 2 full-time people, to be able to use our benefits as we should be able to. It's very difficult to get these 2 departments. It's one department, but basically almost 2 separate departments based on filling coverage for 2 separate counties.
Other questions or comments? Keith Stride, did you have a comment that you'd like to share with us?
No, Mr. Chair. It does, obviously the contingency fund request would cover this year, and then funding beyond that would have to be part of the ongoing budget process, like any other position.
Thank you. We've talked about the staffing of the medical examiner's office off and on over the last several years. And we've known going right along that it's been significantly understaffed and that something would have to be done. And now we've reached that point. Marcy, I do have a question that I'd like you to elaborate a little bit on. It's found at the bottom of on page 2 and the top of page 3 of your report, and it has to do with the split between Dunn County and Eau Claire County. And I don't know if I'm misunderstanding this or reading it wrong, but on the bottom of page 2, it says it's agreed upon that 80% of the salary and benefits, and that references the Chief Deputy Medical Examiner position. 80% of that would be provided by Dunn County, 20% by Eau Claire County. This mirrors the arrangement of the current Chief Deputy, which is 80% by Eau Claire and 20% by Dunn. Am I misunderstanding this, or how does that work?
Yeah, I guess it probably doesn't mirror it. It's an opposite right now. And Keith might be able to help with this too. Although I took this position and Keith came and Paul came all at a similar time. So we weren't part of the writing of the contract with Eau Claire County. Originally, I was the chief deputy, but the prior medical examiner was more involved than myself by far in the writing of this contract. And the way that the 80-20 split came to be was if you took 100 deaths in a month, which we have many more than that, but just for a simple example, probably 80, it's very close to 80 of those deaths will occur in Eau Claire County compared to the 20 deaths in Dunn County. And so that was part of the reasoning of this unprecedented merge of two counties like this. They had to figure out just how to make that split in costs. And that was one of the main ways of figuring that out was caseload. There's so much more to this job than those numbers, and it's the hours that are put in. So to this point, Eau Claire County has paid 80% of both Lynn and I's wages and benefits, and all of the Eau Claire County deputies, 100% of theirs. And so now when we're looking at the numbers and if I look at the budget expenditure line items, and we talked about that, Eau Claire County is paying about $220,000 a year in salary and wages to have the same amount of hours covered per year as Dunn County at that 55,000. And in order to kind of bring things where they need to be for future, if Eau Claire and Dunn County ever decided to not be in collaboration together any longer, we need to bring the numbers, in my very strong opinion, a little closer to what is fair at making that coverage for Dunn County citizens, so they can also have the same dedicated and appreciated employees and have some retention in future if things change. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. I'm going to ask Mr. Stride, does this make good financial sense?
Yes, it does. From day one that I reported, working with Marcy and County Manager Miller, we've been watching this closely and have had multiple conversations. In fact, Marcy and I have even met with Eau Claire County officials, and it's been an ongoing evolution, looking at the position and the funding for them. The proration makes sense. The organizational or operational adjustment here makes sense as well. Again, when you're covering 24/7, 365 days a year, and relying very heavily on, Marcy, correct me if I'm wrong, at least 8 part-time people that have limited number of hours, because if we go above 1559, then we have to pay benefits, which are considerably more expensive if we can fill them. So this really does make the most efficient use of dollars for both Dunn County as well as Eau Claire County, and provide the services where we need to provide under both the contract and just our obligations to Dunn County residents.
Thank you. I don't think there's any question, but that we need to do something about the staffing situation in the ME's office. I mean, that's, again, we've talked about this for the last several years. This is nothing new. So it's not a concern, but my chief issue at this point is how we're doing it, rather than as a regular budgeted item. We're going to use, or we're going to ask for contingency funding. And I've mentioned this to other people. I sit on the administration committee, and on a couple of occasions, I've been the only no vote on a contingency funding request, because it doesn't meet the criteria that we established for use of contingency funds, which is that either A, it's an emergency, or B, it's an opportunity that we can't pass up. When this comes to the administration committee, I don't think there's any question but that it's important and necessary. My question would be, does it meet either of those criteria for emergency or opportunity? I'm being swayed right now by the opportunity side of that argument. Because again, we've been through this for several years. We know that it has to be done. So let's get it done.
So,
Go ahead, Marcy.
Yeah, so I'll just add a little bit on the urgency part of this and the emergency part of this. I've collected data through the last almost 5 years that I've done this, and I have only made asks where we need asks for money wise. But as listed in my request, I have 2 deputies out, one that's resigned and going to stay on a very limited basis, started out as a resignation and will be kept on as a reserve. I have another deputy who is out of these 7 that is out adopting a child who has many, many needs. We don't know when she'll be back. And another young man who is also pursuing an opportunity in Minneapolis with his other full-time job. It is very urgent that we get a person in there. My preference would have been waiting to put that in a budget for 2022. I physically cannot keep up the pace that I'm keeping up, and nor can I expect that of my chief deputy. And quite frankly, it is a very urgent need. We need to be able to staff for both of these counties. And should this not be approved, I will be looking for guidance on what steps need to be taken when these slots aren't filled and we don't have coverage to respond to these needs when cases arise.
Thank you, Marcy. Any other comments, questions, discussion about the motion to recommend and forward this contingency fund request to administration? Kind of depends on how you define it. This is much less clear cut than some of the other requests that I've turned down. I'm going to go back to, do we need to do something about the funding for the medical examiner's office? Yes. We've been underfunding that office for years. As some of you remember, it was what, 1.5 years, 2 years ago that they got laptops. Prior to that, they've been using their own laptops, for crying out loud. We've never thrown away a whole lot of money on the ME office, and it's time, especially when we're facing these staffing shortages, to do something about it. And in that context, it's an emergency.
I was gonna say, if we don't have anyone go out and they need it, then it becomes.
Right. Yeah. An emergency is one thing, a crisis should be avoidable. Chairman Bartlett.
I think it is an emergency. Correct me if I'm wrong, Marcy, but you and the chief deputy are working about you have one weekend off a month. And that's pretty much an emergency when you consider a couple of employees. We just can't fill the other positions. Hopefully a full-time position will get filled. And it's Dunn County that we're hurting.
Other discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor to approve and recommend the contingency request to the Committee on Administration. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Marcy.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, what do we got next? We have a contingency fund request from the clerk of courts. And again, you got the information on this in your packet. I would entertain a motion to forward this, and then if Katie has some information she'd like to share, we can talk about that. Does anybody want to move that we recommend this contingency fund request to the Committee on Administration? Supervisor Rogers moves.
No, second.
Supervisor Bauer seconds. Okay, we have a motion. Speaking to the motion, Katie, was there anything you'd like to share that was not in your staff report?
Just elaborate just a little bit. We had an unexpected retirement that was not budgeted for this year. And the judge's office is a very small office. There's only 2 judicial assistants. So we would be leaving only 1 judicial assistant to have to assist the judges starting in August. That's really the basis for it. It's $12,950 to pay out by employer after some time in vacation time. Other than that, I also have a vacant position in my office. Okay, I also have a vacant position in my office that I'm actually withholding filling the position for just for financial purposes, but the judge's office cannot go without having an additional JA for the rest of the summer. So that's the urgency for this request.
Questions, discussion? Supervisor Bauer.
How long does it take to fill a position like this? Do we interview through the interview process to hiring somebody full-time? How long will it take?
I would say at least 4 to 5 weeks, just by the time we post it for 2 weeks, do the interviews, and then let them have a 2-week notice. So we would need to start probably recruiting here sometime in June so we can get them started the first week in August.
And could they hit the ground running, or would they have the experience? So you got to break them in as well.
We'd love for them to have experience. It just depends on who the applicants are, but there will be some hands-on training between the judges, myself, and with the current judicial assistant individual in the office.
Other discussion? Supervisor Rogers.
So the contingency that we're requesting is to pay the cost of the retirement.
Correct, yes.
And then we're just replacing, rehiring, refilling that position.
Correct. Yep, we're just replacing a current employee. We're not adding an additional position. It's just that we did not budget for the employee to retire. So if they had vacation and sick time that per the county handbook, they will get paid out. And we don't have the additional funds in the budget for that for 2021.
Supervisor Bartlett.
This position that you mentioned is open in your office. How long has it been open?
I have another employee retiring July 2nd that I will not hire just so that we can make my budget balance at the end of the year, because last year you guys did award us an additional deputy clerk position that was to start the beginning of August. So if you would allow us to recruit for the judicial assistant position and hire, we'd have a new JA starting in August and a new deputy clerk. And I would still be down 1 position, but I will abstain from hiring that until our budget's made whole, which will probably take me until November in theory to make it balance.
To the argument of urgency or emergency, one of the problems with a small pool of employees is that you can't reasonably predict a level of retirement on any regular basis. If you've got 100 employees, you can reasonably expect that X number of them will be leaving on an annual basis, and you can build that into your budget, but that's not something that's easily done when you've got such a small number of employees. One surprise announcement like this, and that, yeah, that's, and again, in my mind, and when we talk about this in administration, that's where the emergency comes in on, in my thinking, so.
Confused on why the cost to pay what is owed this employee is not within the budget already. Because it's already owed to that employee. Now we're seeing that we have to generate more money to pay what was already owed to the employee.
And to some, I see where you're coming from. It's like funding a retirement system, and you put that money away on a regular basis. We don't do that exactly the same in our budgets. We can, if we've got a large number of employees, we can budget that on an annual basis, but we run a year-to-year budget. So it's, you know, we've got how many employees total that are eligible for retirement benefits?
Mr. Chair, certainly it's a significant volume of people that would be within that range. You know, and I couldn't hear all of Supervisor Rogers' comments, but you know, as from a budgeting perspective, Dunn County in recent years has been asking departments, like we're going through the budget process now, the early stages, to find out if they have suspicion or understandings that employees might be retiring. If employees volunteer that up, certainly we can budget for that, but it's always that balancing act of, you know, you can't afford to necessarily budget if you don't know for sure, especially with budget limits being so tight. So you can't get to the ideal program of annually budgeting whatever percentage or based on your census. So it has been hit or miss. In some cases, employers are willing to step up, and we are not, we're advised against requiring employees to notice there becomes HR issues related to that. So departments do the best they can, you know, understanding where their employees are at, but this isn't the first time this has happened, and it becomes a challenge especially for smaller departments.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Mike?
Answers my question, but I still don't understand why we don't have a line in the budget or something.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but Mike, can you speak directly into your microphone? We can't hear you.
Is that better?
That's a little better. Dan, if you could turn the volume up on his mic, please.
Hello? Testing.
Yes, that's much better. Thank you.
So I guess I don't understand why we don't have a line in the budget to account for expenses occurred that haven't been paid out. I can't imagine doing a budget where we've accrued expenses for labor of some sort or another, whether it's benefits or not, and we're not accounting for that in the cost of that year. So what's carried forward from last year or previous years, this $12,900 that's owed to an employee, I guess I fail to understand why that's not accounted for somewhere in the budget. It just doesn't really make sense. There's no way I can run my business without accounting for money that's owed to my employees. So I guess, could you help me understand how the county does it different than the private sector?
Well, it certainly comes down to complexity and volume of employees. It also comes down to items such as levy freeze. When you're battling a situation with over 600 employees, and let's say half of them are levy funded, it's hard to predict how many people are going to retire in any one year. And you could over budget or you could overtax levy in a hurry if you go just off of a theory. And, let's say that's $400,000. These are just wild numbers, or $100,000. Then it starts competing with what services do we not provide? What don't we do for capital projects and things like that? That's the economic reality of what we're facing with the more than a decade of levy freeze. You can't necessarily do what would be recommended financial practices. I agree. I believe with what I understand you're talking about. I have seen in other entities or organizations in the private sector where they know their employee census and they will budget every year a certain amount that's set aside. Unfortunately, in the reality of what we have right now, we're not able to do that and meet all the goals and stay within the levy freeze restrictions that are hampering us. Add to that, we don't know what each employee is going to have for a leave bank at retirement. We could estimate everybody at the maximum possible amount and adjust that annually. That would be one approach. But again, where do you find the funds for that when the state allows you to such limited growth?
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments or discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor to recommend to the administration committee the contingency fund request for the clerk of court's office. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, folks. And unless I want to readjust the agenda again, that brings us to the conclusion of our scheduled activities for the afternoon. Does anybody have any announcements? Our next meeting is scheduled for 4:30, June 28th. It will be in this building, but not this room. Is that correct, Chairman Bartlett? We're going to be next door? Okay. And many of our loyal viewers have probably noticed that we're not wearing masks today because we're all vaccinated. We're all enjoying the relative freedom that allows us. So thanks to everybody. Thanks to the people who have tuned